Throughout history, the world has been shaped not only by empires and armies, but by routes, lines drawn across deserts, seas, and continents that redirected the flow of wealth, culture, and power. The Silk Road once connected China with the Mediterranean, moving silk, spices, inventions, and with them, ideas that changed civilizations. Far to the north, the Baltic Black Sea route became the artery of the early Slavic world, allowing the Rus to travel from the Varangians to the Greeks, linking Viking traders with the heart of Byzantium. And when Columbus crossed the Atlantic in 1492, he didn't just reach new shores, he created the first great oceanic route of the modern age. A path that transformed the Atlantic into the center of global power and forever altered the fate of Europe, Africa, and the Americas. And in the 20th century, the Panama Canal collapsed the geography of continents, cutting thousands of miles out of global trade and altering the economic destiny of entire nations. Every time a new route appears, the world shifts. Today, one of the most dramatic transformations in human history is taking place out of sight in the frozen crown of the planet. The Arctic, once sealed by walls of ice so thick and ancient they seemed eternal, is warming 4 times faster than the global average. Every summer, for longer periods, the ice retreats. Passages that were impossible for centuries are suddenly navigable. And for the first time, a new maritime corridor is emerging across the roof of the world. A route that is shorter than the Suez Canal pathway. A route protected by vast natural barriers and controlled almost entirely by one country. A route with the potential to reshape how Asia and Europe connect and redefine the balance of global power. This is the story of why Russia is building an Arctic Silk Road and how geography is opening a door that could change everything before our eyes. To understand why Russia is building an Arctic Silk Road, we must first understand the map. Because in the far north, geography is not just landscape, it is strategy in solid form. Russia's Arctic frontier stretches across 7 time zones, touching more of the polar coastline than any country on Earth. Along this frozen boundary lies a chain of natural corridors, deep bays, and narrow straits that form the skeleton of a new maritime route. It begins in the Kola Peninsula, where the port of Murmansk remains ice-free all year, warmed by the last breath of the North Atlantic. From here, ships enter the first great threshold, the Karsky Vorota, the Kara Gate, a narrow passage guarded by the mountains of Novaya Zemlya. Whoever controls this gate controls access to the Western Arctic. Beyond it stretches the Yamal Peninsula, a spear of land pointing deep into the ice. Here, Russia built Sabeta, an industrial fortress on permafrost and the beating heart of Arctic LNG. Further east, the geography becomes raw and primeval. The archipelago of Severnaya Zemlya divides the seas like a natural dam, shaping the paths icebreakers must follow. The port of Dudinka links the Arctic to the mineral wealth of Norilsk. The Lena Delta opens like a fan into the Laptov Sea, allowing Siberia's inland rivers to meet the ocean. Then come the remote military outposts, the New Siberian Islands, Wrangel Island, and the rugged coast of Chukotka, sitting just 85 kilometers from Alaska, a strategic hinge between the Arctic and the Pacific. This is the map behind Russia's ambition, a geography that, for centuries, was locked in ice, and is now becoming the backbone of a new Silk Road. But mastering the map is only the beginning, because none of this matters unless this Arctic route can change something far more important: the global economy. And what Russia is trying to do next could alter the balance of trade between Asia and Europe. Routes only matter when they change something larger than themselves. And the Arctic route, this emerging highway of ice and steel, carries a promise powerful enough to shift the very geometry of global trade. For more than a century, the world has depended on 2 main maritime arteries, the Suez Canal and the Strait of Malacca. Every container, every product, Every supply chain between Europe and Asia has flowed through these narrow passages. They are vital, but also vulnerable. Congested, expensive, and controlled by geopolitical pressures far beyond commerce. The Arctic Silk Road offers something radically different: speed. Sailing from Shanghai to Rotterdam through the Suez Canal takes around 34 days. Through the Arctic, the journey can drop to 20 or 21 days. 2 weeks saved, millions of dollars saved, and an entirely new rhythm for global logistics. This is why the Arctic matters to Russia, and increasingly to China. A shorter route across Russia's own coastline gives Moscow a level of influence that no canal, no strait, no choke point diplomacy could ever offer. It allows Russia to become a toll keeper of the Northern Hemisphere, controlling a corridor that compresses time and distance. Energy is already moving through this corridor. LNG from Yamal flows to Europe and Asia. Nickel from Norilsk fuels global industries. New ports, Murmansk, Sabeda, Dudinka, Tiksi, Pevek, are being transformed into a chain of economic engines stretching across 7 time zones. And yet, for all the opportunity, the Arctic route is not guaranteed. It is still a place of storms, drifting ice, unpredictable seasons, and vast distances. A corridor where profit and peril sail side by side. Because in the Arctic, the biggest question is not whether the route can change the world, but whether the world is ready for the risks that come with it. But every shortcut has a price. And in the Arctic, that price is danger. Danger shaped by ice, darkness, and a climate that opens the door, only to slam it shut without warning. To understand the future of this route, we have to face the brutal reality of navigating the most unpredictable waters on Earth. The Arctic may be opening, but it has not surrendered. Even as temperatures rise and summers lengthen, this remains one of the most hostile environments on Earth. A place where geography is alive, unpredictable, and unforgiving. For centuries, the Northern Sea Route was a myth wrapped in silence. Explorers vanished in drifting ice. Entire expeditions were swallowed by blizzards that erased the horizon in minutes. Today, satellites track every storm, and nuclear icebreakers carve temporary corridors through frozen seas. But the dangers have not disappeared. They have only changed shape. In the Kara Sea, sheets of multi-year ice can shift without warning, crushing steel hulls like tin. The Laptov Sea is a maze of drifting ice floes that can trap ships for days, even in midsummer. Further east, the East Siberian Sea becomes a graveyard of fog, shallow waters, and storms that rise with terrifying speed. And then comes the polar night, months of absolute darkness, where navigation relies entirely on instruments and every decision becomes a test of nerve. This is why Russia built the world's only fleet of nuclear icebreakers, Leviathans designed to force a passage through nature's strongest defenses. They escort convoys, pull cargo ships through frozen choke points, and extend the navigation season week by week. Without them, the Arctic Silk Road would remain a theory, not a route. But even icebreakers cannot tame everything. The Arctic is changing faster than science can predict. Storm patterns are shifting. Ice behaves in new, unstable ways. Some years, the route opens early. Others, it closes unexpectedly. In the far north, the only constant is uncertainty. And yet Russia continues to push forward, not despite these dangers, but because of them. Every risk is a barrier that others cannot easily cross, a natural moat protecting Russia's ambitions. But ice and darkness are only part of the story. To understand the true scale of Russia's Arctic Silk Road, we must look at what is rising in the snow: ports, bases, railways, reactors, and a chain of human-made outposts designed to turn frozen wilderness into strategic power. How Russia is building an Arctic network of towns, bases, and ports. At the far edge of the world where ice and wind dictate the rules, Russia is building a strategic network that is redefining the Arctic map. Along the frozen coastline, the country is weaving a chain of towns, ports, military bases, and megaprojects designed to turn the region into a geopolitical and economic axis of the 21st century. Moscow does not see the Arctic as a frontier, but as a corridor, a polar Silk Road linking Europe and Asia through increasingly navigable seas. Ports and industrial zones, military and control points, mega infrastructure. Three pillars that sustain Russia's Arctic ambition. On the economic front, the ports and industrial zones form the logistical heart of the project. Murmansk in the northwest is the only year-round ice-free port and the gateway to the Northern Sea route. Sabeta, on the Yamal Peninsula, has become a hub for liquefied natural gas, LNG, where Novatek operates one of the Arctic's most advanced energy complexes. Further east, Dudinka serves as the export outlet for Norilsk's nickel and copper, while Tiksi, Pevek, and Providenia strengthen a logistics chain connecting the Arctic to the Pacific and sustaining civilian life in some of the harshest inhabited areas on Earth. This economic network is secured by the military and control points, a chain of bases and airfields that ensure Russia's sovereignty in the high north. On Kotelny Island, in the New Siberian Islands, Russia has deployed radar stations, air defense systems, and year-round runways. Wrangel Island and Nagarskoye Air Base, on Franz Josef Land, host permanent military installations and air surveillance posts over the frozen ocean. From Severomorsk, headquarters of the Northern Fleet, Moscow oversees the security of the Northern Sea Route and the defense of its Arctic resources. Finally, the vision rests on mega infrastructure projects. The Northern Latitudinal Railway, connecting Siberia's oil fields with Arctic ports. Floating nuclear power plants, supplying energy to remote settlements. Submarine fiber optic cables enabling communication, and expanded LNG terminals powering Russia's export ambitions. The result is a network that blends economic ambition, military might, and strategic foresight. Russia is not merely occupying the Arctic, it is transforming it into its next frontier of power. How far can Russia go in its Arctic ambitions without partners? And could the icebound frontier become the meeting point between Moscow's power and Beijing's global reach? The network of Arctic towns, bases, and ports is not an isolated project. It is the northern hinge of a larger Eurasian vision. China calls it the Polar Silk Road, an extension of its Belt and Road Initiative into the world's coldest trade corridor. For Beijing, the melting Arctic is not a distant frontier, but a new shortcut to Europe. For Moscow, it is both an opportunity and a test, how to balance the benefits of Chinese capital with the preservation of Russian control. The two powers see the Arctic not just as a shipping route, but as a strategic link between Asia and Europe, one that bypasses the choke points of the Suez and the Malacca Strait. Joint ventures have become the practical glue of this alliance. In Yamal LNG, China's CNPC and the Silk Road Fund joined Russia's Novatek to finance massive liquefied natural gas facilities above the Arctic Circle. The same pattern extends to mining projects in Chukotka, where rare earth minerals and gold attract Chinese investment. Further west, Murmansk and its surrounding industrial zones serve as logistical hubs feeding energy exports toward both European and Asian markets. The route Murmansk-Yamal-Chukotka now forms an unbroken chain along Russia's Arctic rim, a corridor that ties the Barents Sea to the Pacific, linking the Arctic to the broader Eurasian economic map. But cooperation carries an undercurrent of rivalry. As the US-China confrontation intensifies, the Arctic becomes another stage for influence and access. Washington views the Polar Silk Road with suspicion, wary of Beijing's growing scientific, commercial, and military footprint in polar affairs. Meanwhile, Russia navigates a delicate balance, welcoming Chinese funding while maintaining tight control over navigation rights, data, and security infrastructure. The Arctic, once a frozen void, is becoming a crossroads of great power ambition. Is the Polar Silk Road the birth of a new Eurasian order? Or merely the prelude to another geopolitical contest? And will the thawing ice bring cooperation or competition to the top of the world? Can an alliance built on ice endure the shifting tides of power? Will the Arctic become the new backbone of Eurasian trade? Or the next geopolitical fault line between great powers? The questions that now hang over the Polar Silk Road define not only the future of Russia and China, but the balance of the entire Northern Hemisphere. 3 possible futures emerge from the frozen horizon. 1. A fully operational Arctic maritime chain, rivaling Suez. In this scenario, melting sea ice transforms the Northern Sea route into a stable corridor linking Asia and Europe in half the time of the Suez Passage. Russia's ports, Murmansk, Sabeta, Dudinka, and Pevek, become the pillars of a global trade network. China integrates its Polar Silk Road into the Belt and Road system, establishing shipping hubs and research stations from the Barents Sea to the Bering Strait. Arctic LNG, minerals and rare earths flow through a seamless Eurasian chain, where the once frozen ocean becomes a highway of energy and commerce. 2. A limited seasonal route, controlled entirely by Russia. Here, the Arctic remains largely under Moscow's control. Harsh winters and slow infrastructure growth limit year-round navigation, giving Russia a monopoly over the route's operation. Chinese involvement is tolerated but constrained. Every vessel and cargo must pass through Russian ports, pay Russian fees, and accept Russian escort. The Arctic Silk Road exists, but as a sovereign enterprise, not a shared corridor. 3. A fragmented zone, contested by NATO, the US, and China. In the most turbulent outcome, geopolitical friction turns the Arctic into a chessboard. NATO expands its northern presence, the US strengthens bases in Alaska and Greenland, and China seeks influence through research and investment. Russia responds with militarization, and the region fractures into zones of competing control. The Arctic becomes not a bridge, but a battleground of interests, where trade, security, and climate policy collide. Whichever path unfolds, the stakes reach far beyond the ice. The Arctic Silk Road will test whether nations can share a frontier shaped by both opportunity and peril. Geography doesn't decide who wins, but it decides what is possible. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Leave your reflections below, subscribe to the Geography channel for more geopolitical explorations, and share this video to expand the discussion. See you next time in our ongoing journey through history, power, and place.